or I mean, I've heard people doing this for groups, like a business, because it's like a morphic field. You know, you have several people together, and they believe that there's this business called Microsoft, right? And so there's an energy pattern of that business, and you can actually sort of surrogate for that energy and change that as well. But that's pretty, I haven't done a lot of that. I've done a little bit of, you know, bigger groups and stuff like that.
Wow.
But you can really surrogate for any, I mean, mostly it's for people, but anything that people believe that there's something coherent, some, you know, that morphic field idea. And so, yeah, I can have people call me on the phone and say that they want Psyche. And in a way, it's easier for them. One of the advantages of Psyche is you do less processing, conscious processing of what happened. And sometimes that's, I mean, it's all based on opinion, I guess. Sometimes I think that's wonderful, and sometimes I feel like, no, this person needs to actually say these things and kind of go through. But with the surrogate, you know, they can just tell me what it is they want me to work on, and I can get off the phone and they can be doing something else, you know, and then I can do that work non-locally for them. Most people are more comfortable one-on-one just because it's pretty outside of their belief system, and it was completely outside of my belief system when I started. But I was so convinced by going to the workshop where I was put into surrogation for somebody and was getting messages. I mean, I don't consider myself a psychic or anything. Never really thought about whether I could do that or not. And then said that I had feelings about this woman's father that I was surrogating for. And she said, well, that sounds like his personality, you know. So you can, yeah, we're all connected, I guess, is the message there. But, yeah, it is possible. And, of course, EFT you can do over the phone. So I do phone sessions with EFT with people.
So in theory with the Psyche, just before we leave that for today, I mean, in theory, I could give you a laundry list of all the crap I want to clear. Have you surrogate for me, and I'd be out like at the beach or doing something else, shopping, and you'd be doing my work, in theory.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not saying it would take a short amount of time. Who knows? But definitely,
it's just
yeah.
Interesting new approach. Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
I mean, I think there are times where you test if it's safe and appropriate for you to do such and such a thing, and you get a no. And so maybe in those cases, no, the person needs to be consciously engaged, or this isn't a good day for them, or something like that. So that's possible.
But just to know that in theory, you know.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I know people who
do
quite a bit of non-local work, and of different kinds. And yeah, you know, I didn't believe it until I experienced it, and it was so clear to me, you know, when I was in surrogation for someone else, that I just couldn't. I was like, this is real. I know these are not my feelings. I know these are somebody else's feelings. This is really strange.
Wow.
And
it certainly takes it to a whole new level. So, out of the different, the different methodologies that we're talking about today, do you have a preference? Does one work better than the other? What's the difference?
Oh gosh, I've gone back and forth on that so many times. I think they, between the two, they both bring something different. The language of how they talk about healing is very different. Because EFT talks about the energy system, and Psyche talks about the unconscious, and not going back and processing the past at all. It just shifts the belief. It doesn't go back to where the belief started, which EFT is all about going back. So there's a whole So with EFT, you get to process it a bit more, and I think that there are times where you really need to go back and clear a trauma, like somebody had something really awful happen. You know, they were raped, or the day that their father died or something, and they really need to go back to the time. They can't just clear the belief because, yeah, I maybe that's just from doing a lot of EFT. I mean, there are ways to do some clearing in Psych-K that's kind of like that. You go back. But EFT can be gentler on a specific trauma.
Do you have to do one or the other, or do you often do a bit of both?
I always want to do a bit of both. I usually, once I get in the groove with one, for a session, I usually don't do more than one within the session. Also, because everybody's so new to this, it's too overwhelming to bring in these two. That's probably the main reason, actually. It's too overwhelming for the person. So the idea of tapping on their face is pretty extreme. And so for me to tell them that when they put their arm out and I push on it, then that tells what's going on in their unconscious and what's going on some page that they've never seen, is too much. And for them to talk about their issues. So I usually just do one, and I find that that's people are more comfortable with that. What else did you say?
I'm just wondering if in any way they complement each other, though, for the people that once they get over it, you know?
Oh, yeah. And also, if, like, there are some things that are so much simpler if you don't consciously process with somebody. They get so lost in it. Or you just don't need to go into all that. It's really, you can just find out what unconscious belief they have, shift it, and whistle out of there, you know, and not have to go and talk about what happened when they were 7 and that kind of thing. But I find sometimes that that's not enough. Like I've definitely felt like I've used Psych-K and we get somewhere and we're doing, but it's like we're not getting all the way there. There's something else. But then with EFT, sometimes it's like, whoa, we're spending a lot of time processing and a lot of time talking about it. Maybe because we're trying to think about it too much, we're getting in our own way. And so maybe we could just do Psych-K and kind of find out what the beliefs are in there. You know, and some people's intuition about what's going on with them is better than others, or their ability. It's kind of an intuitive choice whether you want to do one or the other, or a personality thing.
I'm curious, too, because you're working on clearing up subconscious energy blocks, etc. Do you need to consciously know in your work all the time of what you're wanting to clear?
Not necessarily specifically. You mean like if I'm doing Psych-K and I'm not quite sure what I'm changing, it's just kind of in relation to the problem?
Or even if you're working on an issue but you don't need to know the details of what caused it, or, you know, what trauma or what incident, or, you know?
Right. And even with EFT, you don't always have to know. I mean, sometimes you can just tap on what you feel about it, and what it feels like in your body. You know, well, I'm having anger and anxiety, okay, and I'm having this clenching in my stomach that feels like a knot, and I'm feeling this closing in my throat, and you just tap on that sometimes, and you can clear it, and you have no idea what happened, who did what, and you feel better, and the tension about it's gone. So it's all this stuff is very creative in a way, because I think we're still at the, you know, Gary Craig, the originator of EFT, always says we're on the ground floor of a healing high-rise. Like, this stuff is amazing, but 100 years from now, I don't think we're going to be doing this. I think it's going to be, everybody's going to know so well what this is. And one of the biggest blocks, I think, is that we don't believe this stuff, and the paradigm change is hard